because your principal might be checking, so don't raise your hand. Just ask yourself and answer. If you have been to a retreat, probably you will know that there are 3 relationships in a retreat. Okay? The first is the relationship between the retreatant and the retreat director. Okay? Sometimes you can do a retreat on your own, but most people, we have a retreat director. And the retreat director can either give a lecture to a group like this or can talk to you one-on-one. Okay? Some people have gone through a preached retreat, preaching, or a directed retreat one-on-one. Okay? Now, this relationship is very important. If you don't like your retreat director, okay, if he looks like your first boyfriend who was not very nice to you, no, you will not be able to go on the retreat. No? Or if the retreat director looks like somebody you cannot stand, no, if you don't have a good relationship with your retreat director, your retreat might suffer. No? It might still work because of the Holy Spirit, but it will not help. So the retreat director's relationship with the retreatant is very important. If you like your retreat director, if you respect your retreat director, then your retreat will be highly successful, more likely to be successful. But there's a third party in a retreat. Can anyone guess who that is? No? Of course, God is there. No? The retreatant must relate to God. If all you do in a retreat is talk to your retreat director and you like chatting with your, oh, I want to share with you, father or sister, I just want to spend my 3-day retreat talking to you in your room. No? That's not a retreat. You're having a spiritual conversation. No? A retreat, you must relate directly to God. No? Otherwise, there is no prayer. But there's a third relationship. The retreat director must also be relating to God. If your retreat director does not pray or does not believe in God, no, he will not be able to help you. Okay? So, the most important relationship, of course, is the relationship between the retreatant and God. Without this relationship, there is no retreat, there is no prayer, because the retreatant is not relating to God. Okay? But a retreat director who stays too much in the limelight will distract you from the retreat. Okay? No? If your retreat director takes too much of your attention, St. Ignatius in the spiritual exercises said, the retreat director must be careful not to be the star. You're only supporting actor. The real star is God. Okay? Now, I put here a finger pointing to the moon. There's an old story about a fool who went to his teacher saying, show me the moon. I think you know this story, no? And the teacher pointed to the moon using his finger, and the teacher said, describe the moon to me. And the fool pointed to the finger and said, it's long, it's colored brown, okay? In other words, he was looking at the finger, not at the moon. The retreat director is only a finger pointing to the moon, no? If the retreatant only looks at the finger, he or she is not going through a retreat. No? The finger must guide the retreatant to look at the moon, to look at God. So the relationship between the retreatant and God is the most important. A retreat director must also have a personal relationship with God, the yellow bar, the yellow line. Without such a relationship with God, how can the retreat director help you? If he does not pray, if he does not know how to pray, if he does not have a living relationship with God. Okay, so these two relationships, the relationship between the retreat and retreat director, and the relationship between the retreat director and God, are two relationships that help the one relationship that is most important, which is the relationship between the retreatant and God. Okay? That was very long. Is that clear, more or less? Okay. Any question? Do we have any questions so far? Okay. There's one more thing I want to add, and this is this. Sometimes when you're a retreatant, you go on a retreat, you have a question, you have an agenda. There's something you want to pray about. For example, am I being called to the religious life? Or am I being called to marry this person? You have a question, right? But as we know, those of us who have gone on retreats, even if we have our own questions, sometimes God has a different question. You find out something else. No? Sometimes you go on a retreat, you pray for one grace, but God decides to give you another grace that maybe you don't want, but you need more. When we're praying, it's like that, right? It's God who decides. The same thing in a retreat. God is on top of the triangle because it is He who decides what graces He will give us during a retreat. Okay? Are you able to follow so far? Okay? Okay. I hope the silence means yes. Okay. Now, why is Father talking about a retreat? Is He going to give us a retreat? No. Because this is the basis of IPP. No? What IPP does is sort of applies this to the classroom. No? And some scholars have talked about it. In fact, David Hawkins, an educationalist, talks about the I-thou-it relationship in the classroom. So you see, the IPP can help organize all these scholarly findings, no, that are fashionable today. No? So David Hawkins talks about the I-thou-it relationship. Who is I? The learner. The I is the teacher. Thou is the learner. The teacher has to respect the learner. But there's an it, which is the truth. So as you can see, it's very similar to the three-way relationship in a retreat. No? So there's a relationship between the learner and the teacher. As we know, that's very important. And I think Catholic schools in Thailand and all over the world, that's something we can be proud of. That in our schools, unlike the other schools, we pay special attention to the personal care of our students by the teacher. That's the relationship between the teacher and the learner. Okay? But just like in the retreat, the most important relationship is the relationship between the learner and the truth. If all the learner looks at is the teacher and never looks at the mathematical equation that she is teaching, then there will be no learning. No? But as we know, there's a third relationship, no? The yellow bar, which is the relationship between the teacher and the truth. No? Again, the two relationships between learner and teacher and between teacher and truth, okay, help promote the one relationship that matters. The most important relationship, which is the relationship between the learner and the truth. If the learner does not relate directly with the truth, there can be no learning. Again, if the student looks at your finger but not at the scientific theories that you're talking about, then he is not learning. He's only parroting you. He's only repeating what the teacher is saying. No? There's no learning. A class that is too focused or dependent on the teacher will not be ideal for learning. Just like a retreat, if the retreat director is the main star and not God, it's not a retreat. If in the classroom you have a very good dramatic performer, the teacher, but the teacher distracts from the subject matter, it's too teacher-centered. The learning will be more limited. Okay? So again, the teacher is a means, a finger pointing to the moon, which is the truth. Now, a teacher who does not know or like the subject matter will not be effective. For example, you have a teacher teaching English, literature, for example. If the teacher doesn't know the matter or hates the matter, is so bored by the matter, the students will feel it. No? And the students will not be helped. Am I correct? And finally, who decides what should be learned? Sometimes you talk about student-centered learning, and some people think it means the students can decide what they want to learn. That's not true. No? Just as in a retreat, it is God who decides. In the classroom, there are scholars. No? In this case, maybe the Thai government and the TCEC, no? And the scholars in the different subject matters who decide what should be learned by a certain child at a certain age. Okay? We have a community of scholars that decides. No? Not the student. Otherwise, that's the caricature. That's too much student-centeredness. Okay? Now, I want you to think, before you all fall asleep, I want you to think about this. Recall one favorite teacher. Why was he or she your favorite? Okay, do you have a favorite teacher? You don't have a favorite teacher. Okay. Okay. Think of your favorite teacher, only one. Don't think of 20, just one, okay? And ask yourself why. And I want you to talk to your seatmate for 1 minute why that's your favorite teacher, okay? Now, please be very good children and cooperate with me. Talk to your seatmate now. Just pretend. I won't understand anyway in Thai. So just talk to your seatmate. So 1 minute. Can you do that now? Talk to your seatmate about a favorite teacher. What subject did she teach you? How old were you? And why?
ขอให้เราคิดถึงครูสักท่านหนึ่งที่เราชอบมากคนเดียวพอนะครับแล้วคุยกับเพื่อนทำไมเราถึงชอบครูคนนั้น1 นาทีครับ
Okay, very good. I can see that you're talking. I don't know what you're talking about, but I hope it's about the teacher, okay? Now, I ask you that because I want you to think about this, no? When you think about it, whoever your favorite teacher is, he or she might have one or more of what I call the 6 C's of IPP. 6 E's. 6 E's. The first one is empathy and empowerment, no? And it's the relationship between the learner and the teacher. Maybe your favorite teacher was empathizing with you as a student. She or he cared for you so much and empowered you, made you feel that you're able to do things. No? So in other words, maybe this favorite teacher cared for you and help you feel responsible for your learning. No? So that might be your favorite teacher. Might have empathy and empowerment. Or might have expertise and enthusiasm, 2 more E's, no? Maybe he or she inspired you to learn and to love the subject matter. You know, I remember I had an English teacher who loved literature. Every time she talked about literature, she looked like she was in heaven. So as a student, I was not interested in literature. But she was so in love with reading that I said, there must be something good about reading. So I started to read, and I started to discover the joy of reading. So maybe your favorite teacher was very good in the subject or was so in love with the subject. That's why you were inspired. So expertise and enthusiasm. No? So the teacher's relationship to the truth is characterized by expertise and enthusiasm. Or the last one, your teacher maybe was able to design learning experiences in the classroom that motivated you and helped you learn. So the last 2 E's, engagement and education. Okay? So this is what I want you to ask yourself. Based on your opinion, okay, your opinion, so it may be correct, it may not be, it's okay, about Catholic schools in Thailand, which of the 6 E's do you feel you are strongest? Why? And where can you grow? Why and how? No? So first, do you think your schools here in Thailand, I'm just curious, do you think you're strongest in the relationship between the learner and the teacher? Empathy and empowerment? In other words, the teacher gives empathy and empowerment to the students? Or letter B, the relationship between the teacher and the subject matter. The teachers are experts and enthusiastic about their subject. Or C, the relationship between the learner and the subject matter. The learners become very engaged and they learn a lot because of the experiences. Okay? So, I want you to raise your hand. This is only your opinion. Don't check your neighbor. Okay? No, there's no right or wrong answer here. I will ask you 2 questions. The first one, which do you think are, not your school, but Catholic schools in Thailand in general, okay, based on your opinion, where do you think you are strongest? Number 1. Number 2, where do you think you are weakest and you can grow more? Okay? Let's see if you agree with each other. Now, how many people say you are strongest in A, relationship between learner and teacher? Please raise your hand. Okay? Okay? Raise your hand. Okay? Don't be shy. Okay? Okay? Okay. How many people feel that you're strongest in letter B, relationship between teacher and subject matter, experts and enthusiasm? Okay. Letter C, relationship between learner and subject matter, engagement and education. Okay, I think there are only 12 people in the room, no? Because very few people raised their hand. It's okay, it's okay. I understand, we're all very shy. How many of you feel that you are weakest in letter A? Weakest, you have to improve in letter A. Improve in letter A. Okay? Okay, yeah, okay, thank you. How many people feel you have to improve in letter B? Letter B. Okay. How many people feel you have to improve in letter C? Okay. So now there are 20 people. Very good. Thank you very much. I was told there are 430 people here. But okay. The others are still discerning, going on retreat, not to pray over what is the right answer. But if you want to, you can think about this and discuss with your teachers in your school. No? Something to think about, something to discuss and reflect on your practice in your school. Okay? Thank you. Okay, so some beliefs about learning. There are many beliefs about learning in the IPP, but I will only talk about one. No? And I want to ask you if you agree that here, just like what they say in 21st century learning, It is the learner, not the teacher, who is ultimately responsible for learning. Okay? Okay? The learner should be doing most of the work. Okay, so when we talk about student-centered learning, we say the learner is responsible for learning. But what does it look like? What does it sound like? The clue is you go to a classroom and you keep score. How many times, how long does the teacher talk? How long does the student talk? Okay? Who is busier, the teacher or the student? No? If you are like our school, I think the teacher. The teacher is the hardest working person in the classroom. No? The students take it easier. No? And so who learns more? The teacher. The teacher is learning more. No? So if you want, student-centered learning is a very nice poetic word. But what does it look like? What does it sound like? The one doing most of the work should be the student. The teacher, it's harder work for the teacher to let the students work and to watch over this. That's harder. It's easier for the teacher to just give a lecture. But she gets very tired afterwards. No? But for the teacher to design an experience in the classroom where the students do more of the work, that's more difficult. That's more difficult. But the students learn more. So the teacher plays an important role in promoting learning, but not by being the main attraction or the star. Okay? So, do you agree with this philosophy of learning? I think all of us will say yes, no? But what are we doing? What can we begin to do so that we will see it and hear it in the classroom more? Again, I'm not saying we should change tomorrow. We have to do it slowly. We have to talk to our teachers and convince them. We have to build consensus. Otherwise, if we try too hard and too fast, there will be disaster. We know that. We have to do it slowly. Innovation built on tradition. No? Okay. Now, so there are actually two extremes, no, of looking at our students. Sometimes we talk about our students as products of our education. We're very proud of our alumni or alumni, and we say, oh, they are our products. No? Right? We say that, no? Do you say it in Thai? Products in education? Yeah. But the problem with that word is that it makes our students sound too dependent and too passive. What is a product? You make the product. Again, who's more busy? Who's more hardworking? The teacher. The student is just sitting there allowing the teachers to, it's like a factory. One teacher works on the student, English, passes it on to the next teacher, math, passes it on to the next teacher, science. It's like a factory, assembly line. No? So the students tend to be more dependent or passive. But the other extreme, which is also not very good, but which is very fashionable today, students are the consumers. No? They are the consumers. They are the customers. They're paying the school so they can choose. No? We must make them happy. No? But the problem with that is they're too independent and too active. Again, it must be a balance between the two. A balance between the two. So, this is our belief about learning. The student is responsible for his own learning. But again, when we go to the classroom, it's not that simple. How do you strike the balance between between dependence and independence? Between activeness and passiveness. Okay? So, I've talked to you about IPP as paradigm. The details are in the reading. I will not go through it anymore, otherwise we will all be bored. No? But the beliefs about learning tries to answer the question, why IPP? Why are we going to even try it? No? In our experience, it has helped us because it sort of helps us become clearer about our beliefs about learning. No? Remember the triangle? It tells us a lot about what should be happening in the classroom with regard to the three relationships, the teacher, the learner, and the truth. In just one diagram, our philosophy about learning becomes clear, and you can spend 3 days talking about that, no, with your teachers. But the second part, IPP as pedagogy, strategies for teaching, will answer the question how. Again, this is an important question. No? How do we go about it? If it sounds very good to do IPP as a philosophy, how do we actually do it in the classroom? Now, usually, the IPP is a workshop that runs for 3 to 5 days at least. No? So today, I will just give you an overview. If you don't understand everything, that means you're normal. It's okay. No? It's okay not to understand everything. I will only give you highlights. No? But I think here in Thailand, the wonderful thing is you already have an expert team in IPP, and you can invite them to give you a workshop if you want to go deeper into it. No? So I will talk about IPP as pedagogy. Okay? So now, remember I said, IPP allows us to organize what we are learning about education. No? So in the course of our discussion and study about IPP, we have consulted a number of experts. We have read a number of books. I would like to mention 4 that I will be using today. No? We have 4 books. The first one is by David Thornburg, and he wrote this book called The New Basics. No? I will use him in terms of what he calls the learning spaces, which you might have read already in the text. No? The second book, I think you're familiar with. This is very fashionable in Singapore and the US, by the ASCD, no? The Association for Supervision Curriculum Development. It became fashionable about over 10 years ago. It's called Understanding by Design. No? It's a way of designing curriculum. It's by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe. No? And then the third book is this excellent book, rather old, in the 90s, called How People Learn. It's a theories about how people learn. It's edited by John Bradsford, no, for the U.S. National Academy of Sciences. And the last one is a book from the Loyola University Chicago by Lorraine Ozar. It's called Creating a Curriculum That Works. No? So we've consulted a number of references, and we did not use everything there. We picked and chose what applied to us. No? So you may want to read the book, and again, choose only what will work for you. That's allowed. No? But what we have found is that by picking from these books, we were able to organize them under IPP. It made IPP more relevant for us in terms of how do we practice it in the classroom. I'd like to share some of those fruits, the fruits of our study with you today. Okay? So, when we talk about Ignatian Pedagogy, it's based now on Ignatian discernment. No? St. Ignatius came up with rules for discernment in the spiritual exercises. A while ago, when I talked about Ignatian Pedagogy as philosophy, I talked about the retreat experience for St. Ignatius. The pedagogy part is based more on Ignatian discernment. No? What do I mean by that? Today, no, whenever we experience something, because of our culture, everything is going very fast. No? There are so many things to do. If we are not typing in the computer, we're watching TV or using our phone texting, we are always reacting. No? We're always reacting. We experience something, we react. No? And Ignatian discernment tells us there is something missing here. And I think you know this already, no? Because we are not born to be reactors. We must be actors. We must be proactive. No? For Ignatian discernment, before we even act, we must go deep and reflect first. No? For example, let's say you see a poster that says, be a religious sister, join the congregation for something, something. If you react, you immediately join, or you immediately say, no, I don't want. No? But you're invited to discern, to reflect about it first. No? To reflect on your experience and say, is God calling me to apply, to think about religious life? No? So we have to reflect. No? So Ignatian discernment is the practice of reflecting on my experience before making any decision or taking any action. But you know, if we look at our students today, the young people, if we do not train them, if we do not guide them, they will be reactors. They don't press the pause button. We have to press the pause button first, pause, everything freezes, and then we discern and reflect first before we make a decision, before we act. Our students today, because of the way they grew up, because of internet, etc., everything's very fast. They just keep reacting. No? We have to teach them how to reflect. But we have to model reflection. Many of us, I think, also fall into the temptation of reacting. It's very hard to reflect today. We're so busy. No? The teachers in my school are so busy, very hardworking, very dedicated, but too